Steve, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good.
Listen, which one of you is chocolate and which one of you is peanut butter?
I'm peanut butter for sure.
Okay, and I'll take chocolate.
Well, basically what I wanted to say is God is obvious and religion is suspect. And basically I've tried to figure out if the golden rule is the ultimate strategy.
Okay.
And I feel that...
Can we back up half a second?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can we back up just a little bit? When you say God is obvious but religion is suspect,
yes.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're meaning by that.
Well, for me, in my belief, I just believe in God. Okay. I believe that God exists, and...
but why?
Why?
Why do you believe that?
Well, I guess it comes down to the logic. You know, what my logic teacher said is that God is all-powerful and God is all-knowing. And
why would your logic teacher make assertions like that have nothing to do with logic?
Well, that was the definition.
The definition of what?
God.
Okay.
So in a specific context, I'm assuming that they were discussing maybe someone's view of God?
Well, basically, it's you know, when somebody says, "Do you believe in God?" I say, "Well, what is your definition of God?"
Right, and
Correct.
I would too. So what's your definition?
Basically, the definition that I thought was, you know, sounded the best was, you know, God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and I think there's a couple other ones.
Sometimes there's omnibenevolent, but that conflicts with certain
Actually,
others.
omnipotence itself conflicts with itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a logical inconsistency there. So you pick the definition of God because that's the one that you preferred, and then you also think that it's logically supported. And yet, omnipotence in and of itself is logically contradictory.
All-powerful is contradictory?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, not to toss out a tired old canard, but Carlin brought up the can God make a rock so big that even he couldn't lift it? I realize there's an equivocation fallacy in there with regard to powerful, but omnipotence implies you could possibly do something that's logically contradictory. And most new theologians have a special definition of omnipotence, which is God can do everything that's not logically impossible. In order to avoid that, but then omnipotence comes into conflict with other things like omniscience and omnibenevolence. But anyway, I'm curious as to how do you define God, and why do you believe that this God actually exists? I guess the question.
Okay. Well, basically, it's in the definition itself. You know, somebody will say something, and then I'll say, you know, like, you know, define consciousness.
Right.
And if, you know, it gets to the point where if you can't define God, if you can't define consciousness, if you can't define all-powerful, or if you have trouble and you find out that, you know, hey, this, you know, if you look at it this way, it's one way, or if you look at it this way, it's another way. I've never come across anybody that's come across with a really good definition of God.
So
I would agree.
Okay.
So, but basically, you know, it comes down to, you know, if you believe humans are the only ones that have consciousness, or animals are the only ones that have consciousness, or, you know, can rocks have consciousness and stuff like that, then you get back to, okay, well, we don't even have a definition of God anymore. And
I don't know that got anywhere close to explaining to me what God you believe in and why.
Well, I believe God is what is going on right now is God's purpose or God's plan. And I believe that there's only one God because there's only one way that things can unfold. And that since the beginning of time, there was only one way that, you know, or we could say from the Big Bang, there was only one way things could unfold.
He's not understanding the question.
And if that is, if you can define consciousness on that simple of a level, then you can say, okay, God is all conscious.
Okay, I apologize because I'm definitely not understanding a damn thing you're saying. And here's the thing. First of all, we don't define things into existence. Second of all, you're talking about you believe there's a God because you believe that he has a plan.
But that doesn't tell us what
and
God
that
is.
there's only this one possible plan. Well, the first two, I don't see any justification for, apart from your wanting to believe that there's a God with a plan. But your assertion that there's only one way things could have unfolded from the time of the Big Bang is not only wrong, but if it's true, then you're an automaton with no free will and everything you do is pre-programmed.
Well, maybe free will is an illusion.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that
There's
concept.
no way to prove that there is such a thing
I'm
as free
fine
will.
with that concept, but I'm still trying to figure out what your justification was for the first two, that a God exists and he's got a plan, apart from wanting
And I still don't know what he's calling God.
Yeah, and you still haven't defined God. And you keep coming back to consciousness.
Okay, well, I believe in
why.
God, but then again, I believe that God can't be defined.
Well,
so
then we can't know
it's
what
like
you're talking
saying I
about.
don't believe in God, but there's no way I can prove it.
If you believe in God, but God can't be defined.
Then
so
you don't even know what you believe in.
Yeah, you believe in a completely absurd, abstract concept.
I believe in something, but I don't know what it is.
That's silly. I mean,
Well, that's like saying that there's an ultimate strategy. I believe in an ultimate strategy, but I don't know what it is.
But my point is, God is not a strategy, in that I know what a strategy is, but I don't know what a God is.
We can define
Well,
strategy.
you know what a strategy is, but you don't know what an ultimate strategy is.
No. We can know what a strategy is.
Requires a goal, but
and ultimate requires that we define a goal.
But my
and
point is, we know what strategies are.
Okay,
So
you
my
know what a
question is, what are
strategy
you
is,
calling? What is
but
a God?
you cannot define what an ultimate strategy is.
But I don't.
It would
But I don't
depend.
know what a God is, whether it's ultimate or not. Can you tell me what a non-ultimate God would be?
I could say, that there is there's an explanation for this universe, or
Right.
there's an explanation for parts of this universe that we understand,
Okay.
but there is no explanation for everything in this universe that we understand.
Right now, so-
whether
so
there
basically-
is an
I wanna know
ultimate
what he's calling
explanation
God.
or not, we can't say. But
No,
we
no,
can
no.
say there are small explanations that we can understand.
So what you're saying is because we don't know everything now, some things
Well,
this justifies
okay.
a God that you haven't defined?
Wait a minute. How can I talk to somebody about something that they can't even tell me what it is we're talking about? I don't understand how this conversation can even happen.
Well, there are certain subjects that when you talk about them, you have to start off with I don't know if there is an ultimate strategy. But I know that there are strategies. I know that there are strategies that work.
Yes.
But is there an ultimate strategy?
We don't
Some
know.
people believe there is. Some
don't-
people believe there isn't.
But I can't even say that I've seen a non-ultimate God. I mean, I don't know what it is that you're calling God, and I mean, I'm assuming.
Okay, well, let's say God is strategy. God is the ultimate strategy.
Okay, so you define God as strategy.
Okay, let's say God is the ultimate strategy.
Okay.
Now, you believe in strategy.
Strategy for what?
For getting rich, or
God is the ultimate
God is
strategy.
every
in some
strategy.
way, or
God is all strategy. whatever
being
is
able to get
ultimate.
from this part of the planet to the other part of the planet. You have
Okay.
a strategy, and you use that strategy to get what you want.
Then I would
But
assert-
is there,
Is there a reason it's called
that
strategy?
you use this. There are strategies out there.
Okay.
But is there an ultimate strategy? Is there an ultimate plan?
No, there's not. There's not an ultimate strategy, and your assertion that we can't know that is flatly wrong. Because if you're looking at an ultimate strategy as something that can get you to all goals, some goals are in direct conflict.
Correct.
And therefore you cannot have an ultimate strategy. Much the same way that you cannot have an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God. It's logically impossible.
I don't see I don't see why there can't be an ultimate strategy.
Okay, here's an example. Let's say that tomorrow some farmer hasn't gotten rain on his crops in like 6 months. He really needs it to rain on his crops. In that same town, there's a woman getting married. She's getting married outside. She really needs it to not rain outside. If there are goals that conflict, how can there be an ultimate strategy?
Well, one would have the ultimate strategy, and the other one would have a less than ultimate strategy.
The ultimate strategy for the bride is that it does not rain. The ultimate strategy for the farmer is that it does rain. How do you...
But one of them is misrepresenting an ultimate strategy.
Well, no, it would be really a problem if it rained on her wedding, and it would be really a problem if it doesn't rain on his field. They both have legitimate, concerns.
But neither one of them, both of them have strategies, but neither one of them have ultimate strategies.
But you're asserting that there could be an ultimate strategy and that this ultimate strategy would necessarily be universal. So there must be, according to your assertion, an ultimate strategy that would work equally well for both of them, and I'm saying that there can't be.
No, I'm not saying that it could work for both of them, because then it would not be an ultimate strategy.
Okay.
And that therefore proves that there's only one God.
That's the point that I'm trying to make. The fact that you couldn't come up with a strategy that would work for both of them because there's a conflict.
And a compromise means
logical
it's not
contradiction.
Ultimate. Yeah.
Which makes this impossible. It's like square
circle. So
circle.
It's impossible to have two gods, but it's not impossible to have two humans.
Whoa. First of all, if you're going to just say God is strategy, as Tracie tried to point out, why don't we just use the word strategy?
Okay.
Second of all, where do you get off saying that there can only be one God?
Because there can only be one ultimate strategy. You can't have two ultimate
why do you
strategies.
Assume that?
Because they could conflict.
I work as a project manager, and one of the things I realize is that there are sometimes equivalently efficient ways to achieve the same goal, and it's just a matter of which you prefer. It doesn't matter. You can do it this way or that way. Why is that a problem, that there could be equally efficient means of achieving the same ultimate goal?
Because you're talking about human beings, and their strategies are flawed, and although, both of them can succeed with their strategies, both of them can fail with their strategies, neither one of them is an ultimate strategy. They are limited strategies.
Why couldn't there be an ultimate strategy that could be achieved by multiple equally efficient means?
Because then you would have an unmovable object and an unmovable force acting on that object.
There's the contradiction that made me say in the first place that your ultimate strategy thing is wrong. But okay, can we just drop the crap about ultimate strategy? If all you believed in was strategy and the possibility of an ultimate strategy, or even the actual existence of an ultimate strategy, I'd have very little problem apart from the potential logical contradiction. What you said, though, was that you believed in God.
But he defines it as
and then you define God as strategy. Well, congratulations. I believe in God because
I was just trying to explain something that you could understand. I could call God a plan. I could call God the ultimate
what you
I don't need there's no definition.
I don't need
then you ask me to say, okay, simplify it. And in the minute I simplify it, then you can attack me on saying that's not God.
No, I don't need you to make analogies. I didn't ask you to simplify. What I asked was, what was your definition of God and why do you believe in it? You chose to use analogies and you chose to talk about consciousness and you chose to make a bunch of statements.
I chose to say all-powerful and all-knowing.
Right.
And you said, well, explain something about that. And I said, well, okay, I'll try to explain that.
Ignoring the contradictions with all-powerful and all-knowing, you haven't said anything other than, I believe a God who's all-powerful and all-knowing exists. And my next question is, why do you believe that?
Because I see things unfold in time, in one direction, only one way.
And how does that necessitate a deity that is omnipotent and omniscient? How does that preclude natural processes of time flowing?
Which would also happen in a stream that's one.
Well, then, then what you're saying is what I believe God is.
Nature?
If you call it nature, then I'll agree that it's nature. But I could do the same thing with nature that you did with strategy with me, because it doesn't encompass everything.
You could have resolved all this by simply saying up front that you're a pantheist.
No, because then you would have two gods.
No,
you'd have one.
No,
you'd have one.
Pantheism is the position that God is nature, or God is everything, or God is pantheism is the universe
and everything that it encompasses.
Or that, there is one one thing behind everything.
Now you're
not
a pan-atheist.
Not that it's everything,
Yeah.
but there is something behind everything
Okay.
that's running the show.
Then you're a pan-atheist. You're saying that God is the universe plus one. God is the universe, and there's something more as well. That it is like the universe plus something that may or may not be imperceptible. But pantheism is belief that God is nature, God is the universe. Panentheism is that God is the universe, but there's something more to it.
But there's another problem, because you define God as omnipotent and omniscient, and I'll say that the universe is neither.
That's depends on how you define all-powerful and all-knowing.
I think what he's saying is it can encompasses all power and all knowledge.
Yeah, in that case, you're back to the pantheism, and you've said nothing. I don't understand. Do you think that this God is conscious?
If you take everything as conscious, yes. If you say a rock is conscious,
So basically
which
you have a
some
big-
religions say, then I would have to agree with that.
I think the question would then be, if you believe that God is more than just the universe, the question is then, why do you believe there's something more than the universe?
No, I believe that it is the explanation of, or it is the essence of how the universe, or let's say the equation or the science of how the universe unfolded, and it could only unfold one way.
But that would be the universe. I mean,
Yeah,
that is
it
what
would
the universe does.
It would be the universe,
reacts.
but the universe, when you talk about,
Where's the
that's why I went to strategy, because that's like saying, there's strategy to chess, and you're saying, well, you're talking about the chess pieces. No, I'm not talking about the chess pieces. I'm talking about the strategy of chess.
We get that. What
I'm
you're
not sure
not
I
getting is that you're using a God label, applying it to the universe, asserting that there's something extra, giving it characteristics, and not justifying one bit of it. You have a big, useless definition of knowledge of God, and when challenged on it, all you come back with is, it's natural, it's the universe, it's...
Well, that's why I said religion was suspect, is because
I don't care.
suspect
But
is
he said God is
because
obvious, and I'm
religion is
not
the
finding this obvious
explanation
at
of
all.
God.
I hadn't challenged your religion is suspect claim. What I challenged was your God is evident claim.
God is evident. Okay, so I can't prove that there is a God.
But you said he's
I don't
obvious.
care if you can prove it.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's obvious that there's one thing, there's a basic thing that's running this universe, or a basic thing that allows, a basic thing that...
Basically,
There's a
you're done.
basic thing.
Basically, you're done.
The universe does what it does, I think was what we
when you
came
say
to on
something
that
is
one.
obvious, then it should be damned easy to explain
No
that
doubt.
it's obvious.
No doubt. This mug is obvious.
It's obvious. When you say that you believe in something, it should be something that you can actually define, at least to some degree.
If you
And
want to
with-
talk to other people about it, it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, Tracie tried to do this from the beginning, and I probably should have just listened to her and stopped the conversation then, because it was clear that this conversation could go nowhere, because, I mean, you might as well, and I promise, I'm not just trying to be mean here. You might as well have just said, I believe in something, I can't really define it, I'm not sure why. Because that's what you ended up doing. You didn't add anything new to a conversation. You didn't justify any of the assertions. You basically made this big emotional argument about how you sense that there's some plan for the universe, that something must be guiding all of this, and I'm just going to label that God. And when you do that, I'd much rather you do that than come in and tell me that your logic teacher defined God and then proved through logic that God existed, and then making analogies to strategy.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, to call all-knowing an attribute of God, and then when you're called on it, you simply say, well, it's all conscious knowledge contained within the universe.
Yeah.
Well, that's the universe. I mean, if God's all-knowing capacity comes from what things are known by things that can know things in the universe, you're talking about the universe.
Plus, I don't necessarily buy this argument from people that I definitely don't buy the shared unconsciousness argument, but this claim that the universe is conscious of itself because it contains conscious entities. Okay, if you want to say that we're part of the universe, then yes, in that sense it's true. we are part of the universe, we are conscious, and therefore some part of the universe is conscious of itself. But to extend that analogy, or to extend that situation to the universe has become conscious, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But
honestly,
it's
I
beside the point.
don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying that the things that are conscious in the universe constitute God's consciousness.
Yes, I was making a side point.
Okay.
I was making a side point based on some other emails we got. But in the end, man, it's, when people ask me, what do you believe or what don't you believe and why? Granted, I don't always have the best answers ready. Sometimes people ask me about things that I haven't really thought about that much. And what usually happens in that case is that I then go off and think about it. So the next time I'm asked that, I at least have some explanation, some answer that I at least understand, hopefully well enough, to be able to convey it to somebody else.
But if you approach somebody with it and then have no idea what you want to talk about, that's what I don't get. It's one thing for someone to ask me what I believe about something I may not have thought about,
yeah,
and I might not have a good answer. But if I go to somebody and I say, I want to tell you about what I believe,
yeah,
and then I can't even define that, what am I approaching people for, to talk about something that I don't even understand myself about what I think?
For those people who think this was all unfair, I don't call out. People call in to this program. And if you call in, you better bring your A game, and you definitely better have an understanding, because I'm really, as much as I'd love to do more educational, hand-holding discussion, I'm really to the point where long calls that don't ever get to any point, start parading in circles, or make inane points, we're just done, and move on from there, because there are people out there that are actually legitimately interested in the subjects that we talk about, on both sides, on the theistic side and on the atheistic side. And I'd much rather have conversations that, with no regard to the two individuals in the conversation, benefit everybody else more. And I don't think that the last couple of calls have actually done that.